I received a text message from my son, Mason, that read, "Mom, don't come for Christmas. Harper isn't comfortable with you here." I read those words once, twice, 3 times, waiting for them to change, for them to say something different. But no. There they were, cold as ice, cutting like a knife in my chest. I had just spent $450,000, my entire life savings, to save their house from foreclosure. I sold my own home, I sold my car, I even sold the jewelry my mother inherited to me. And now, barely 3 weeks later, my daughter-in-law decided I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I only replied, "Okay, noted." That night, they didn't know that I was no longer going to be the exploited woman I had been for years. What happened next left them completely destroyed. Because this, what I am about to tell you, is not just the story of a hurtful message. It is the story of how a 71-year-old woman, invisible to her own family, finally decided to collect every cent of dignity they owed her. And believe me, the bill was higher than they ever imagined. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old, and I live in a small apartment I rent on the outskirts of the city. I lived my whole life being the woman who resolves things, the one who sacrifices, the one who gives without expecting anything in return. I worked for 40 years as a nurse in a public hospital, working double shifts, weekends, and holidays. I raised Mason alone after his father abandoned us when he was barely 5 years old. I gave him an education, I gave him love, I gave him every second of my time. Mason grew up, became an engineer, and married Harper 7 years ago. And I, like a good mother, accepted my daughter-in-law with open arms. How naive I was. How blind I was for so long. Harper was always different. From the beginning, I noticed that calculating look, that way of smiling that never reached her eyes. But I stayed silent, because Mason seemed happy, and that was the only thing that mattered to me. Over time, I started to feel that every time I visited, she found a subtle way to make me feel uncomfortable. A comment about my clothes, a suggestion that I rest more at home instead of visiting them so much, a look of impatience when I told a story. Mason never defended me. He never said anything. He just looked away, as if he didn't want to see what was happening right in front of his eyes. 6 months ago, Mason called me, desperate. His voice was trembling on the other end of the line. "Mom, I need help. We're going to lose the house. The bank has started the foreclosure process. We owe too much and we can't pay." My heart broke hearing him like that, so vulnerable, so scared. I asked him how much they owed. $450,000. "Mom, if we don't pay in 2 months, we lose everything." I didn't have that amount in cash, but I had my house. The house where I raised Mason. The house full of memories, of laughter, of tears, of life. Without thinking twice, I made the decision. I sold my house. It was the most painful decision of my life. Packing 40 years of memories into boxes, saying goodbye to every corner, to every wall that held the story of my life. But I did it because he was my son, because I thought that was what a good mother does, sacrifice until the end. Besides the house, I sold my car, a Toyota I had had for 15 years but ran perfectly. I sold my mother's jewelry, the pieces she gave me before dying, making me promise I would take care of them. I sold everything. I gathered every penny and gave it to Mason. Exactly $450,000. I watched his eyes fill with tears, how he hugged me and told me, "Mom, I'm going to pay you back every cent. I promise, you are the best mom in the world." Harper was there, standing behind him, with that smile I already knew. She didn't say thank you, she didn't say anything. She just nodded slightly, as if I had just done what was expected of me, nothing more, as if it were my obligation to save them. I left there with a heavy heart but relieved to have helped my son. I moved into a small apartment, a 1-bedroom, in a neighborhood that wasn't the best, but I told myself it was worth it. That the sacrifice was worth it if my son was okay. Weeks passed and I waited for a call, a visit, a simple message asking how I was, if I needed anything. Nothing. The silence was absolute. Mason didn't answer my calls with the same frequency. When he did, the conversations were short, rushed. "Mom, I'm busy. I'll call you later." But that later never came. I tried to visit them a couple of times. The first time, Harper opened the door with a look of annoyance. "Eleanor, we're busy today. Maybe another day." The second time, They didn't even open the door. I saw the lights on. I heard voices inside, but no one opened the door. I stood there like a fool, ringing the doorbell, feeling the tears threatening to come out. Finally, I left, humiliated, invisible. Then that message arrived. The message that changed everything. It was mid-November. I was mentally organizing what Christmas would be like, thinking about what I could cook to bring to dinner at Mason's house, what gift I could buy him despite my tight financial situation. And then my phone vibrated. "Mom, don't come for Christmas. Harper isn't comfortable with you here. We hope you understand. Happy holidays." I read those words and felt as if the floor disappeared beneath my feet. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. I had just given them everything, literally everything I had, and now they were telling me I wasn't welcome at Christmas because my daughter-in-law didn't feel comfortable. I called Mason immediately. He didn't answer. I texted him, "Son, I need to talk to you. Please." Nothing. Silence. I waited hours. Days. Finally, 3 days later, I received another message. "Mom, we've already made the decision. Please respect it." That was it. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement of everything I had done. Just that cold order to respect a decision that excluded me, that erased me, that turned me into nothing. That night I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the house I sold, for my mother's jewelry I gave away, for the years of sacrifice that apparently meant nothing. But at some point, between the tears and the rage, something changed inside me. A small but firm voice told me, enough. Enough of being trampled on. Enough of being invisible. And it was there, in that moment of absolute darkness, that I decided this wasn't going to end like this. The next day, I did something I had never done in my life. I called my friend Susan, my neighbor in the building, and told her everything. Susan is a direct woman, one of those who doesn't beat around the bush. She is 68 years old and worked for 30 years as a secretary at a law firm. When I finished telling her, she stayed silent for a moment. Then she said, "Eleanor, you need to protect yourself. This isn't right. Something weird is going on and you need to find out what it is." She was right. Something didn't add up. Why so much sudden rejection? Why so much coldness after I saved their financial life? Susan suggested something that made me feel uncomfortable at first. "You have to investigate. You have to know what they are planning." I felt like a spy, like someone doing something wrong. But then I remembered that message, that cruel exclusion, and the discomfort transformed into determination. Susan knew people. She had contacts from her years at the firm. She connected me with a private investigator, a man named Patrick, who agreed to help me for a reasonable price. I gave him all the information I had, addresses, names, schedules. I felt strange doing this, but I also felt that I was finally taking control of my own life. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks in which I followed my normal routine, acting as if nothing was happening, but with my heart racing every time my phone rang. Finally, Patrick called me. "Mrs. Eleanor, we need to talk. I have information you need to hear." We met at a small coffee shop near my apartment. Patrick arrived with a manila folder full of documents and photographs. What I saw there left me frozen. Harper was planning to sell the house I saved with my life savings. Patrick had obtained copies of emails between Harper and a real estate agent. In those emails, she asked about the market value of the property, how long it would take to sell it, and most shockingly, she asked how she could ensure the money from the sale remained only in her name. There were messages where she said verbatim, "My husband doesn't need to know the details. I handle the household finances." My blood boiled. Not only were they excluding me, they were stealing from me. They were planning to take my sacrifice and turn it into personal gain, leaving me on the street with nothing. But there was more. Patrick showed me photographs of Harper meeting with a man in fancy restaurants, holding hands, kissing in the parking lot. "She has had an extramarital affair for at least 6 months, Patrick explained. "This man is a bank manager. Apparently, she plans to divorce your son once she sells the house and keeps the money." I felt the world spinning around me. Mason knew nothing. My son was being deceived, manipulated, used. And I, who only wanted to protect him, had ended up funding his own destruction. I asked Patrick if there was anything else. He nodded gravely. "There is something you should know. When you gave the money to your son to pay the mortgage, Did you sign any document? Any receipt? I told him yes, that my accountant had advised me to document everything. Years of working hard taught me to be careful with money. When I gave the $450,000 to Mason, I insisted we sign a document. At that moment, Mason seemed annoyed. "Mom, I'm your son. You don't trust me?" But I was firm. "Son, this is a lot of money. I need to protect myself. And you too." We signed a simple contract where he acknowledged the debt and committed to paying me when he could. But what I hadn't told Mason, what my accountant suggested I include as additional protection, was a special clause. That clause stated that if the property was sold within the next 5 years, 100% of the value had to be returned to me as immediate payment of the loan with real estate collateral. Furthermore, I had included a lien on the property. That meant that legally, although the house was in Mason and Harper's name, I had a preferential right over any sale. Without my notarized authorization, they couldn't sell anything. When I explained this to Patrick, his eyes lit up. "Mrs. Eleanor, do you have a copy of that document?" I told him yes, that I kept it in a safety deposit box at the bank. "Then you have power. You have total control of the situation." His words filled me with a strange sensation. For the first time in months, I felt I wasn't completely helpless. I had a weapon. I had protection. And best of all, they didn't know I had it. That night, alone in my small apartment, I took the document out of the bank and read it completely. Every word, every clause. My accountant had done an exceptional job. Everything was there, clear, legal, unappealable. Mason had signed without reading well, trusting blindly, rushed to solve his crisis. He never imagined that his mother, the submissive and compliant woman of always, would have taken legal precautions. He never thought I could be so strategic. I called Susan and told her everything. She, with her legal experience, confirmed what Patrick had said. "Eleanor, you have the upper hand. They can't do anything without you. Absolutely nothing." She suggested I contact a lawyer she knew, someone trustworthy who could advise me on the next steps. She gave me the number of Arthur, a lawyer specializing in family law and real estate transactions. I called him the next day. Arthur received me in his office that same week. He was a man of about 50. Serious but kind. I showed him all the documents. The contract signed by Mason, the bank transfer receipts, the registered lien, the evidence Patrick had collected about Harper's plans. Arthur reviewed everything meticulously. After almost an hour, he looked up and said, "Mrs. Eleanor, you have a solid case. Not only can you stop any sale, but you can demand immediate payment of the full debt if they violate the terms of the contract. And believe me, trying to sell without your consent is a clear violation." I asked him what I should do. Arthur explained the options. I could confront them directly, I could send a legal warning letter, or I could wait for them to make the mistake of trying to sell and then act. "But there is a third option," Arthur said, with an almost imperceptible smile. "You can let them believe they have control, allow them to move forward with their plans, and just when they are about to close the sale, you appear with the documents and stop everything. Publicly, legally, forcefully." That idea scared me and excited me at the same time. I had never been a woman of confrontations. I always avoided conflicts, always sought peace, but something had changed in me. That message rejecting me from Christmas, that coldness, that monumental ingratitude, had broken something inside me. I was no longer the submissive Eleanor. I was no longer the mother who accepts anything just to keep the peace. I had become someone new, someone who demanded respect, someone who collected what was owed to her. I decided to wait. I decided to let Harper move forward with her plan, let her get confident, let her believe she had won. Arthur agreed with the strategy. In the meantime, we would prepare everything. Every document, every piece of evidence, every legal argument. When the time comes, you won't just stop them, you will leave them speechless. I walked out of that office feeling different. My hands were no longer shaking with fear. They were shaking with anticipation. For the first time in months, I slept well that night. The days passed, slow but constant. Patrick kept monitoring Harper's movements. He informed me every week about the progress. "She already put the house on the market discreetly," he told me one afternoon. "She is using a private real estate agent to avoid open publicity. She doesn't want her husband to find out until it's too late." Each report confirmed what I already knew. My daughter-in-law was a calculating manipulator, and my son was just a pawn in her game. But I was not going to be another piece moved at her whim. I was going to flip the whole board. I kept my distance. I didn't call Mason. I didn't insist on visiting them. I didn't send pleading messages. Absolute silence. That silence was strategic. I wanted them to feel safe, to think I had accepted my place, that I had resigned myself to being discarded. And it worked. Susan, who occasionally saw Mason at the neighborhood supermarket, told me he looked calm, even happy. I saw him last week buying expensive wine and talking on the phone about Christmas plans. He was laughing, as if nothing was wrong, she told me. Those words hurt, but they also strengthened me. They reminded me why I was doing this. December arrived with its cold air and holiday lights. The city filled with decorations, carols, happy families walking the streets. I watched everything from my window, from my small apartment that didn't have a single Christmas ornament. I wasn't in the mood for celebrations, but I had a plan, and that plan was worth more than any decoration. In mid-December, Patrick called me with important news. Mrs. Eleanor, the house already has an interested buyer. They offered $530,000. Harper already accepted verbally. They are scheduling the closing of the sale for December 28th, 3 days after Christmas. My heart beat fast. It was time. Everything was converging exactly as Arthur had predicted. Harper wanted to close the sale during the holidays, when everyone was distracted, when lawyers and notaries worked part-time, when Mason would be too busy with family celebrations to pay attention to details. I called Arthur immediately. He already had everything ready. I have the documents ready to file a court order blocking the sale. But I suggest something better. I suggest we wait until Christmas. Until that day they excluded you. That day, you appear. Not with tears or pleas. You appear with power, with documents, with the truth. The idea terrified and fascinated me. Confronting them on Christmas Day, in front of whoever was there, it was bold. It was almost cruel. But after everything they had done to me, I felt it was poetic justice. I asked Arthur how exactly it would work. He explained the plan step by step. You will arrive at the house on December 25th in the afternoon when families are usually having dinner. I will accompany you with the notarized documents. We will knock on the door. When they open, you will ask to speak to your son. If they refuse to let you in, I will intervene legally. Once inside, you will present them with the documents proving that any attempt to sell without your consent is illegal. You will explain, calmly, that you have total control over that property until they pay you every penny of the $450,000 you lent them. The image of that scene produced conflicting emotions in me. On one hand, I felt guilt. What kind of mother confronts her son like that? But on the other hand, I felt conviction. What kind of son treats his mother this way? What kind of woman allows herself to be trampled on without defending herself? I told Arthur yes, that we would do it, that I would be ready. I spent the next few weeks preparing mentally. I rehearsed in my mind every word I would say, every answer I would give to their possible excuses. I imagined Mason's face of shock, Harper's face of fury, the exact moment they would realize the invisible woman had learned to make herself seen. Susan supported me in everything. She came to my apartment, we drank tea, and she constantly reminded me why this was necessary. It's not revenge, Eleanor. It's justice. It's dignity. It's teaching them that you have rights too. Patrick kept me informed until the last moment. The sale is still scheduled for the 28th. Harper already signed the preliminary contract with the buyers. She put down a deposit of $50,000. If the sale doesn't go through, she will lose that money. That information gave me even more power. Not only was I going to stop her plan, it was going to cost her real money. Money she couldn't recover for violating a purchase agreement. The irony was perfect. She tried to steal $450,000 from me, and now she was going to lose $50,000 for her own ambition. On December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas, I received a message. It was from Mason. My heart skipped a beat. I thought maybe he had reconsidered, that maybe he would invite me after all. I opened the message with trembling hands. It said, "Mom, I hope you have a nice Christmas. We will be with Harper's family. Maybe we'll see each other at New Year's. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement. Just those hollow, empty words, probably said because Harper told him it was the right thing to do. I read the message and, instead of crying, I smiled. I smiled because I knew I had made the right decision. I replied simply, "It's fine, son, enjoy yourselves." Not another word. He didn't know that I knew everything. He didn't know his marriage was a lie, that his wife was betraying him, that they were about to rob me, that I had the power to destroy his entire house of cards, and I wasn't going to ruin the surprise. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, I stayed alone in my apartment. I heard the carols coming from the neighboring apartments, the laughter of families celebrating. I prepared a simple dinner, a piece of chicken with salad, and ate in front of the TV watching an old movie. But my mind was elsewhere. I was going over the plan for the next day. Arthur had told me he would arrive at my apartment at 5 in the afternoon. From there, we would drive together to Mason's house. We calculated arriving around 6, the perfect time to interrupt a Christmas dinner. That night I almost didn't sleep. Not from nerves, but from anticipation. It was like waiting for Christmas morning when I was a child. But instead of gifts, I expected justice. I got up early on the 25th, showered, dressed carefully. I chose a dark green dress, elegant but sober. I put on light makeup. I wanted to look good, look strong, look like the woman I was, someone who couldn't be ignored. I kept copies of all the documents in my purse. The contract signed by Mason, the transfer receipts, the lien registration, everything. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon sharp, I heard the doorbell. It was Arthur. He was carrying a black briefcase and wearing a formal suit. "Ready, Mrs. Eleanor?" he asked with a reassuring smile. I nodded, grabbed my coat, and we left. During the car ride, Arthur reviewed the key points with me. "Remember, stay calm, no matter what they say. Don't raise your voice. Don't let yourself be provoked. You have the law on your side. You have the documents. You have the power. You just need to maintain composure." His words gave me security. I took a deep breath and watched the streets illuminated with Christmas lights as we approached the house I saved, the house from which I had been excluded. We arrived at 6:10 in the evening. The house was fully lit. From outside, I could see the lights of the Christmas tree through the living room window. There were several cars parked in the driveway. I recognized Mason's car, and another one I assumed was Harper's family's. Arthur parked right in front of the house. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked me one last time. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." We walked toward the front door. My legs were trembling slightly, but my determination was solid as a rock. I rang the doorbell. I heard voices inside, laughter, Christmas music, then steps approaching. The door opened. It was Harper. She was wearing a bright red dress, perfect makeup, hair up in an elaborate style. When she saw me, her smile froze. Her eyes darted quickly from me to Arthur, confused, alarmed. "Eleanor? What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Arthur spoke with a professional and firm voice. "Good evening. I am attorney Arthur Harrison, and I represent Mrs. Eleanor. We need to speak with her and Mr. Mason about an urgent legal matter related to this property." Harper paled visibly. "This is not a good time. We are in the middle of Christmas dinner with my family." Arthur didn't flinch. "Ma'am, this is a matter that cannot wait. It has to do with an illegal real estate transaction that is in process. We can talk out here or inside, but this conversation is going to happen now." Harper swallowed. I could see the panic growing in her eyes. Let me call Mason." She turned and yelled inside. "Mason, come here. It's your mother." Her tone was accusatory, as if I were the one doing something wrong. I heard hurried steps, and then my son appeared. He was wearing a cream-colored shirt and dark pants. When he saw me, his expression was one of total shock. "Mom, what are you doing here? We told you not to come." His words were like a slap. Even now, even in this moment, his first reaction wasn't joy to see me or concern for my well-being, but annoyance at my presence. Arthur intervened again. "Mr. Mason, your mother is here because you are about to commit real estate fraud that violates a legal contract you signed. We need to talk. Now." Mason looked at Harper, then at me, then at Arthur. "What are you talking about? What contract?" I took the documents out of my purse and extended them to him. The contract you signed when I gave you $450,000 to save this house, son. The contract that states you cannot sell this property without my authorization for the next 5 years. Mason took the papers with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the pages, searching, reading. I saw the exact moment he understood. His face turned pale. Mom, I didn't read this clause. I didn't know that. Harper snatched the documents from his hands. She read them quickly, and with each line she read, her expression became more furious. This is ridiculous. Eleanor, you can't do this to us. It's our house. My voice came out calm, cold, controlled. It is your house that I saved with my life's money, and according to the contract your husband signed, I have a lien on this property. Without my notarized signature, you cannot sell absolutely anything. Harper exploded. This is manipulation. You are a manipulative old woman who is trying to control our lives. Arthur stepped forward. Ma'am, I suggest you watch your words. What is manipulation is trying to sell a property with a registered lien without the creditor's consent. That is fraud. And I understand that you already signed a purchase agreement scheduled to close on December 28th. Is that correct? The silence that followed was deafening. Mason looked at Harper with an expression of total confusion. What? What is he talking about? What purchase agreement? Harper tried to regain control. Mason, I was going to tell you. It's an incredible opportunity. They offered us $530,000 for the house. We could pay your mother's debt and still have $80,000 left to start over in a better place. But her voice sounded desperate, fake. Mason looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. You were going to sell our house without telling me? When did you plan to mention it? After it was already sold, I took another document out of my purse. This was Patrick's report, with the photographs of Harper with her lover, the emails where she planned to keep all the money, the conversations with the real estate agent. Mason, there is something else you need to see. I handed him the folder. He took it with trembling hands. When he opened it and saw the photographs, his face transformed completely. The color disappeared from his face. His hands started to shake. What is this? Harper, what is this? Harper tried to grab the folder, but Mason pulled away. He continued looking at the images, reading the printed emails. It says here, you plan to keep all the money from the sale. That you were going to divorce me? That this guy? He pointed to a photograph where Harper was kissing another man. That this guy and you have plans together? His voice cracked with every word. Harper tried to deny it. That's a lie. Your mother hired someone to invent this. It's all fake. Arthur spoke with authority. The photographs have certified dates and times. The emails were obtained legally through server requests. Everything is verifiable and admissible in court. Your wife not only planned to sell the house without your knowledge, she planned to keep the full money and leave you. The man in the photographs is Julian, a manager at National Bank. I have his full details if you need them. At that moment, I heard voices coming from inside the house. An older woman appeared behind Harper. What is going on here? Who are these people? It was evidently Harper's mother. Behind her came more people, clearly relatives, who had been at the dinner. They all stood in the threshold, observing the scene with curiosity and confusion. Harper tried to close the door. Mom, go back inside. It's just a misunderstanding. But Mason stopped her. No, it's not a misunderstanding. Let them in. Everyone needs to hear this. Mason opened the door completely and ushered us in. The living room was beautifully decorated for Christmas. A huge tree with golden lights occupied the corner. There were garlands hanging from the walls. The dining table was set with a silver tablecloth and elegant plates. There were at least 10 people there. Harper's mother, 2 brothers with their wives, some cousins, all dressed elegantly for the occasion. They all looked at us with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. I could feel the tension filling the atmosphere like a toxic gas. Mason walked to the center of the living room, still holding the folder with proof of Harper's infidelity. His voice trembled, but there was determination in it. Everyone needs to know what is happening. My mother, whom I told not to come today, is here because she discovered that my wife planned to sell our house behind my back and keep all the money. A murmur ran through the group. Harper's mother stepped forward, indignant. What kind of accusation is that? My daughter wouldn't do something like that. Arthur, always professional, intervened. Ma'am, I have complete documentation here proving exactly that. Your daughter signed a sales contract for $530,000 2 weeks ago. Closing is scheduled for December 28th. In emails with the real estate agent, she specifically asked how to ensure the money remained only in her name, excluding her husband. He extended copies of the emails. Harper's mother took them with trembling hands and began to read. Her expression changed gradually from indignation to shock. Harper tried to take control of the situation. Mom, it's not how it sounds. I was just exploring options. I was never going to do anything without talking to Mason first. But her voice lacked conviction. Mason confronted her directly. Exploring options? You signed a contract. You accepted a deposit of $50,000. And according to these emails, he held up the papers. You plan to use that money to buy an apartment only in your name? That was also just exploring options? One of Harper's brothers, a burly man of about 40, approached. Harper, what is he saying? Is this true? Harper opened her mouth to answer, but no convincing sound came out. Her eyes moved desperately looking for a way out, an explanation, anything that could save her. But there was nothing. The evidence was there. Clear, irrefutable, printed on paper, certified, legal. Then Mason opened the folder completely and took out the photographs. He put them on the coffee table, one by one, like cards in a deadly game. Photographs of Harper kissing another man in a parking lot. Photographs of them holding hands entering a hotel. Photographs of them dining in a romantic restaurant. Each image was like a bomb exploding in the living room. I heard gasps, stifled exclamations, someone muttering, "My God," quietly. Harper's mother put a hand to her mouth. Harper, what is this? Who is that man? Harper tried to grab the photographs, but Mason pushed her away. That is Julian, a bank manager. Apparently, she has had a relationship with him for at least 6 months. While I worked 12 hours a day to keep this house afloat, while my mother sold everything she had to save us from losing our home, my wife was planning her future with another man. Tears began to roll down Mason's cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of betrayal, of years of trust destroyed in an instant. My mother gave me $450,000. She sold her house. She sold her car. She sold her own mother's jewelry, all to save us. And I, like an idiot, told her not to come for Christmas because you didn't feel comfortable with her. Because you, the woman who was planning to rob me and abandon me, didn't want my mother around. Harper finally spoke, but her voice was different now. It was no longer the confident and controlling woman. It was someone cornered, desperate. Mason, let me explain. Things between us haven't been right. You are always working. You never have time for me. I felt lonely, abandoned. Julian gave me the attention you never gave me. Her words were like gasoline on the fire. Mason took a step toward her, his face red with fury. So it's my fault? Working 12 hours a day to pay the debts you made with your credit cards is my fault? Sacrificing my time, my health, my relationship with my mother, all to give you the life you wanted. And you repay me like this. One of Harper's brothers tried to intervene. Mason, everyone is upset. Maybe we should take a moment to calm down and talk about this more quietly. But Arthur shook his head. No, sir. This is not just a family problem. This is a legal matter. Your sister signed fraudulent contracts attempting to sell a property over which she does not have full right. Mrs. Eleanor has a registered legal lien on this house. Any attempt to sell without her consent constitutes fraud. The buyers already deposited $50,000. If the sale does not go through, your sister will lose that money as a penalty for breach of contract. Harper's mother let herself fall onto the sofa, the photograph still in her hands. I can't believe this. I didn't raise my daughter to be like this. To lie, cheat, steal. Her voice was full of shame and disappointment. Harper turned to her mother. Desperate. Mom, please, it's not that simple. There are things you don't understand. Eleanor is manipulative. She put that lien on the house without telling us. She set a trap for us. Finally, I spoke. My voice came out stronger than I expected. A trap? I gave you $450,000 to save this house when the bank was going to take it away. My accountant advised me to protect myself legally because it was a huge sum of money. Mason signed the contract knowing it was a loan, not a gift. What I didn't know was that you would repay my generosity by excluding me from your lives, treating me like trash, and planning to rob me down to the last penny. I approached Mason. I looked him straight in the eyes. Those eyes I had seen grow since he was a baby. Son, I would have given my life for you. In fact, I gave my life for you. I gave my house, my savings, my security, and you repaid me by telling me I wasn't welcome at Christmas because your wife, the woman who was betraying you, didn't feel comfortable with me. Do you know what that felt like? Do you have any idea of the pain you caused me? Mason began to cry openly. Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. Harper told me you were being too intrusive, that we needed space as a couple. I just wanted to keep the peace in my marriage. I never imagined that she... His voice broke completely. He covered his face with his hands, sobbing. It was heartbreaking to see my son like that, destroyed, humiliated in front of everyone. But it was also necessary. Necessary for him to finally see the truth. Harper's mother stood up. She walked toward her daughter with an expression I had never seen on a mother's face. Absolute disappointment. Harper, give me your car keys. You are leaving this house right now. I won't allow you to stay here embarrassing me, embarrassing our family. Harper backed away. Mom, you can't kick me out. This is my house. The mother pointed at me. According to the documents, this house has a lien in Eleanor's name. Legally, she has more right than you. And morally, after what you have done, you have no right to anything. Harper looked around, seeking support among her relatives. But everyone avoided her gaze. Her brothers looked at the floor. Her cousins had backed away toward the corners of the room. Even her mother turned her back on her. The silence was crushing, crueler than any word. Finally, Harper grabbed her purse from a nearby chair. Before leaving, she looked at me with pure hate. This doesn't end here, Eleanor. I'm going to get a lawyer. I'm going to fight this. Arthur stepped forward, his voice calm but threatening. Ma'am, I strongly suggest you don't do that. We have documented evidence of fraud, adultery, and attempted misappropriation. If this goes to court, you won't just lose everything. You will face criminal charges. The $50,000 deposit you already lost is just the beginning. Harper opened her mouth to reply, but her mother interrupted her. Harper, please. You've done enough damage. Go. Stay at my house tonight, and tomorrow we'll talk more calmly. Harper looked one last time at Mason, as if hoping he would say something, defend her, stop her. But Mason didn't even look at her. He was sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, completely destroyed. With a final sigh of frustration, Harper stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The silence that followed was so heavy it could almost be touched. Harper's mother approached me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Eleanor, I knew nothing about this. If I had known what my daughter was planning, what she did to you after your generosity, I would have stopped her myself. Please, accept my sincerest apologies. She took my hands in hers. I could feel they were trembling. You don't have to apologize for your daughter's actions, I said gently. I know what it is to be a mother. I know what it is to love a child and discover they made terrible mistakes. I don't blame you. One by one, Harper's relatives began to say goodbye. They mumbled awkward apologies, avoided eye contact, slipped out the door as if the house were contaminated. In less than 10 minutes, the living room that had been full of people celebrating was now empty except for Mason, Arthur, and me. The Christmas tree kept shining with its golden lights, oblivious to the human disaster that had just unfolded under its shadow. The plates on the dining table were untouched, the food cooling, a visual reminder of the celebration that never happened. Mason finally raised his head. His eyes were red, swollen from crying. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in years. Mom, I don't know what to say. I don't have words for what I did, for how I treated you. His voice broke with every word. I sat next to him on the sofa. Part of me wanted to hug him, comfort him, as I had done when he was a child. But another part knew this was a moment of truth, a moment where words and consequences mattered more than easy comfort. Mason, throughout your life I was there. When your father abandoned us, and you were 5, I worked double shifts to give you everything you needed. When you wanted to go to college and we didn't have money, I took a 3rd job at night to pay your tuition. When you married Harper, Even though I saw signs that she wasn't who you said she was, I stayed silent because you seemed happy. And when you asked me for help 6 months ago, when you told me you were going to lose this house, I sold everything I had without a second thought. You know why I did all that? Mason shook his head, unable to speak. Because you are my son. Because I love you more than my own life. Because parents make impossible sacrifices for their children without expecting anything in return. But what I did expect, son, was respect. I expected to be treated with basic dignity. I didn't expect gifts or the money back, although legally I have a right to it. I just expected to be seen, to be valued, to be included in your life. And instead, I became a nuisance your wife wanted to eliminate. Tears rolled down Mason's cheeks again. Mom, I was a coward. Harper manipulated me, convinced me that you were too controlling, that we needed space. I should have seen through her lies. I should have defended you. I should have questioned why suddenly she didn't want you to come after you saved our house. But I didn't. I failed you in the worst way possible. Arthur, who had remained silent observing the scene, finally spoke. Mrs. Eleanor, we need to discuss the next legal steps. The sales contract Mrs. Harper signed has a penalty clause. She already lost the $50,000 deposit for breach. The buyers could sue her for additional damages. Furthermore, there is the issue of the lien on this property. Technically, you can demand full payment of the $450,000 at any time, or you can execute the lien and take legal possession of the house. Mason looked at me with terrified eyes. Mom, are you going to take the house from me? I'm going to lose everything. I saw the genuine fear on his face. The same fear he must have felt 6 months ago when the bank threatened to take everything. But I wasn't the bank. I wasn't Harper. I was his mother. And despite all the pain, despite all the betrayal, I was still his mother. I'm not going to take the house from you, Mason. But I'm also not going to continue being invisible. I'm going to give you a chance to fix this, but on my terms. I took out a document Arthur and I had prepared days before. This is a new agreement. It states that you will continue living in this house. You will pay maintenance costs, taxes, and utilities. But the property will remain with the lien in my name until you pay me the $450,000. I don't demand immediate payment. You can pay me in reasonable installments that we will establish together with an accountant. I continued explaining while Mason read the document. Also, this agreement states that any major decision regarding the property must have my approval. You cannot sell, you cannot mortgage, you cannot make structural changes without my consent. And finally, it states that I have the right to visit you whenever I want, to be part of your life, to be treated with the respect I deserve as your mother and as the person who saved this home. Mason finished reading and looked up at me. Mom, this is more than I deserve. After how I treated you, after choosing Harper over you, I would have expected you to take everything and never speak to me again. His voice trembled with emotion. But you need to understand something. Son, I'm not being generous because you're perfect. I'm being generous because I'm your mother and because I believe you can learn from this. However, this is your last chance. If you disrespect me again, if you allow anyone to treat me like trash again, if you choose anyone else over the relationship we have, then yes, I will execute this lien and you will lose everything. Do you understand? Mason nodded vigorously. I understand. Mom, I swear I will never fail you again. I will prove to you every day that I deserve your forgiveness. He signed the document with trembling hands. Arthur certified it as a witness and put the copies in his briefcase. Good. Now there is another issue we must discuss. Your marriage to Mrs. Harper. Mason ran his hands through his hair. Exhausted. There is nothing to discuss. I'm going to divorce her. After what I saw today, after discovering her lies, her infidelity, her plans to rob me, I can't stay married to her. Arthur nodded. That is a wise decision. I recommend you hire a divorce lawyer as soon as possible. I have colleagues who can help you. Given the facts, the evidence of adultery and fraud, you have a very strong position. It is likely the divorce will be resolved quickly, and you won't have to give her anything. Mason let out a bitter laugh. It's ironic. I spent 7 years trying to please that woman, giving her everything she asked for, going into debt up to my neck to maintain the lifestyle she wanted. And all this time, She was planning to abandon me and rob me. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood houses shone with Christmas lights. Happy families having dinner together, children opening gifts, laughter and joy. Here inside, a destroyed marriage, a broken family, consequences of lies and betrayals. Son, this is going to hurt for a long time. But it's also going to teach you. It's going to teach you to see people for who they really are, not for who they pretend to be. It's going to teach you to value those who genuinely love you, not those who just use you. And I hope it teaches you never to take your mother for granted again. Mason approached me and hugged me. It was a different hug from all the ones we had shared before. Not the casual goodbye hug or the obligated hug at birthdays or family events. It was the hug of someone who just realized what they almost lost, of someone clinging to the only real thing left in their life. I felt his tears wetting my shoulder. Mom, forgive me. Please, forgive me. I hugged him back, although my heart was still full of pain. Forgiveness isn't something that happens in an instant, not after so much damage. But it was a start. Arthur discreetly said goodbye. I will leave you to talk more privately. Mrs. Eleanor, you already have my number. Call me if you need anything. Mr. Mason, I will send you contacts of divorce lawyers tomorrow. I nodded gratefully. After he left, the house was left in an almost unreal silence. The contrast with the chaos of an hour ago was shocking. Mason and I sat down again, this time without the weight of secrets between us. Everything was exposed, every lie revealed, every wound open. Tell me, I said softly, when did all this start? When did Harper start pushing you away from me? Mason took a deep breath, like preparing to confess something painful. It started about 2 years ago. At first it was small comments. She said things like, "Your mom is very intense," or "We need our space as a couple." I didn't pay much attention. I thought they were just normal adjustments of a young marriage. But over time, the comments became more frequent, more direct. He continued talking, the words coming out as if he had been waiting years to say them. Harper started saying that you were too critical of her, that you always made her feel inadequate. I never saw that, but she insisted so much that I started to doubt. She told me that when you came to visit, she felt judged, watched, as if she never did anything right. And I, like an idiot, believed her. I started limiting your visits, without even verifying if what she said was true. Hearing this hurt me deeply, because it confirmed what I had felt, but could never name. I had been systematically erased from my son's life through subtle lies, careful manipulations. And when you asked for the money, when I sold my house to save you, I asked, needing to understand that part too. Mason closed his eyes, shame visible in every line of his face. When you gave me the money, I was so grateful, so relieved. I felt we could finally breathe. But Harper, she changed after that. She told me that now you were going to feel you had control over us, that you were going to use that money as leverage to meddle in our lives. She said we needed to establish clear boundaries before you became too involved. I thought it made sense. I thought I was protecting my marriage. I never imagined that she was protecting herself, making sure you weren't around to discover her plans. I stood up and walked to the Christmas tree. I touched one of the golden ornaments, observing my distorted reflection on its shiny surface. Do you know what hurts me the most, Mason? It's not the money. Money can be earned again, although at my age it's hard. What hurts me the most is that I became invisible to you. The woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything to give you a good life, suddenly wasn't worth a Christmas invitation. I felt as if everything I did for 40 years meant nothing. Mason stood up and came toward me. Mom, it meant everything. It means everything. I was a blind man who let a manipulative woman push me away from the only person who has always been there for me. I was a coward who chose the comfort of not confronting his wife over the discomfort of defending his own mother. But that ends today. I promise you, I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him so much that I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Promises are easy to make in emotional moments. Son, what matters are actions. Prove it to me. Prove to me that you learned something from all this. He nodded with determination. I will, starting tomorrow. I'm going to contact the divorce lawyer. I'm going to untangle myself from Harper completely, and I'm going to start rebuilding our relationship brick by brick if necessary. We stood there under the Christmas tree, two people broken for different reasons, trying to find their way back to each other. The clock on the wall marked almost 9 at night. Technically, it was still Christmas, although it didn't feel like any Christmas I had experienced before. "Are you hungry?" Mason asked suddenly. "All that food on the table is still there. We could have dinner together. Just us two, like a real family." The idea made me smile despite everything. I would like that. We went to the kitchen and heated up the food that had been left untouched during the drama. Turkey, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, all prepared with care for a celebration that never happened. We sat at the dining table, just the two of us at a table designed for 12 people. It was sad and comforting at the same time. We ate in silence at first, then we started talking. Not about Harper, not about the disaster of the night. We talked about memories. Mason recalled Christmases when he was a child, when we lived in our small apartment and I worked extra shifts to buy him gifts. "Remember that Christmas you gave me that red bicycle? I was about 8 years old." He smiled, remembering. "I bought it secondhand at a flea market and painted it myself. It took me 3 weeks of nights painting it on the balcony so you wouldn't see it." Mason let out a sincere laugh, the first of the night. "I thought it was the most beautiful bike in the world. I took care of it like gold. I never knew you had painted it yourself." We continued sharing memories, some happy, some bittersweet. We remembered his college graduation, the day he told me he was getting married, moments that had been buried under years of routine and distance. For the first time in a long time, I felt I was talking to my real son, not the controlled version Harper had molded. It was like recovering something precious I thought I had lost forever. Around 11 at night, I started to feel the tiredness. It had been an emotionally exhausting day. Mason insisted on driving me to my apartment. During the car ride, the silence was comfortable, not tense as it had been for months. When we arrived at my building, he walked me to the door. "Mom, can I come visit you tomorrow? I want us to spend the day together. I want to start making up for all the lost time." "I would like that very much, son." We hugged again at the door. This time, the hug was softer, less desperate, but equally meaningful. I watched him drive away in his car and went up to my tiny one-room apartment. I sat on my worn sofa, surrounded by the few possessions left after selling everything. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel poor. I felt rich in something much more valuable than money, regained dignity. The following days were a whirlwind. Mason kept his promise. He came to visit me the next day, and we spent the afternoon walking in the park, talking about everything and nothing. He told me more details about his marriage with Harper, about signs he ignored, about how she was always good at manipulating him. She knew exactly what buttons to push to make me feel guilty or to make me doubt myself, he confessed. Every time I questioned something, she turned the situation around to make me feel I was the problem. 2 days after Christmas, on December 27th, Mason received a call from the real estate agent Harper had hired. The buyers were furious because the sale couldn't proceed due to the undisclosed lien. They threatened to sue not only for the $50,000 deposit, but for additional damages because they had already sold their own house in anticipation of the purchase. Harper, who was legally responsible for the contract, faced a potential lawsuit of over $100,000. Mason told me this without emotion. "It's what she deserves," he said simply. I said nothing. I didn't feel joy at Harper's suffering, but I didn't feel pity either. The consequences of her actions were exactly that. Consequences. She had played a dangerous game betting with other people's lives and she had lost. Now she had to pay the price. On January 1st, New Year's Day, Mason officially filed for divorce. His lawyer, a meticulous man named Arthur recommended, built a solid case based on proven adultery, attempted financial fraud, and hiding assets. Harper tried to hire her own lawyer, but after reviewing the evidence, most advised her to accept a quick settlement. She had no chance of winning. The photographs, emails, fraudulent contracts, everything was documented irrefutably. Harper tried to contact Mason multiple times during those first weeks. Calls, messages, emails full of excuses, promises of change, pleas for forgiveness. Mason showed me some of the messages. She says it was all a mistake, that she never really planned to sell the house, that the other guy meant nothing, that she loves me and wants another chance. His voice was flat, without emotion. "What do you think, Mom? Should I at least listen to her?" I looked straight at him. Son, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your marriage. That decision is yours. But I ask you this. Did Harper ever, in all these years, give you reason to doubt her honesty before all this blew up? Mason thought for a moment. There were small things. Lies about spending, about where she had been, things I ignored because they didn't seem important. But now, looking back, I see there was always a pattern. There were always secrets. Then you have your answer, I said. People don't change who they fundamentally are, just because they got caught. They change their behavior temporarily until they find another opportunity. The question isn't whether she made a mistake. The question is, if you can live the rest of your life wondering when the next deception will be, the next betrayal. Mason nodded slowly. You're right. I can't live like that. I don't want to live like that. He blocked all of Harper's numbers and instructed his lawyer that all communication must be through legal channels only. In late January, I received unexpected news. Susan came to my apartment one afternoon with information she had discovered through her contacts. Eleanor, you need to know this. Harper is completely ruined. The buyers sued her and won. She has to pay them $120,000 in damages. Her lover, that bank manager, left her as soon as the scandal went public. Apparently the guy is married and has 3 kids. He didn't want to risk his reputation associating with her, Susan continued. Her family also cut her off. Her mother refused to help her financially. Her brothers don't speak to her. She is living in a tiny apartment in the worst neighborhood in the city, working 2 jobs to pay legal debts. And from what I heard, she had to declare personal bankruptcy. I listened to all this without reacting. A part of me, the part that still remembered being a good person, felt a pinch of pity. But the bigger part, the part that had been humiliated and discarded, only felt that justice had run its course. How do you feel knowing that? Asked Susan, observing me carefully. I thought for a moment. I feel empty regarding her. I don't feel joy for her suffering, but I don't feel sorry either. She chose her path. Every decision she made, from cheating on Mason to trying to rob me, was a conscious choice. Now she lives with the consequences of those choices. It's as simple as that. Susan nodded. You are stronger than I thought, Eleanor. Many people in your place would be celebrating her downfall. But I wasn't celebrating anything. My focus was completely on rebuilding my relationship with Mason. He came to visit me 3 or 4 times a week. We had dinner together, watched movies, talked for hours about everything we had missed during the years of distance. Slowly, painfully, we were healing. It wasn't a quick or easy process. There were moments where I still felt resentment, where old wounds opened up. There were days where Mason arrived with flowers or small gifts, trying to compensate for years of neglect with symbolic gestures. One day, in mid-February, Mason came to my apartment with a proposal. Mom, I've been thinking. This house where I live, the house you saved, is too big for me alone. And this apartment of yours is too small for what you deserve. Why don't you move in with me? I looked at him surprised. You want me to live with you? He nodded fervently. Yes, there are 3 bedrooms. You could have the master bedroom, the biggest one, with a private bathroom. I would take one of the smaller rooms. We could share expenses, share space, and, more importantly, share time together, make up for all that was lost. The offer tempted me deeply. Living in a real house again, having space, having company. But it also scared me. Son, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want you to feel you have to take care of me out of obligation or guilt. Mason took my hands. Mom, it's not obligation or guilt. It's because I genuinely want to have you close. These last months, rebuilding our relationship, I realized how much I missed you, how much richer my life is when you are in it. Please, think about it at least. I thought about it for a week. I talked to Susan about it. She advised me. Eleanor, if in your heart you feel it is genuine, do it. But establish clear boundaries from the beginning. Don't go back to being the invisible mother who does everything and receives nothing. She was right. If I was going to do this, it would be on my terms. I talked to Mason and we established clear rules. I would have my private space. We would share household chores equally. I would not be his maid or his automatic cook. We would be 2 adults sharing a space with mutual respect. In early March, I moved in. Mason helped me pack my few belongings. When we arrived at the house, I saw that he had prepared the master bedroom completely for me. He had bought new furniture, beautiful ivory curtains, had painted the walls a soft peach tone he knew I liked. "I want this to be your sanctuary," he told me. "A place where you feel safe, valued, at home." I was so moved I cried, not tears of sadness, but of something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The first months living together had their adjustments. Mason was used to living a certain way after years with Harper. I was used to my solitude in the small apartment. But we worked on it. We established routines. He cooked on Mondays and Wednesdays. I cooked on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Fridays we ordered takeout. Weekends we improvised. We shared grocery shopping, cleaning tasks, decisions about the house. Something beautiful began to happen. The house, which had been a symbol of betrayal and pain, transformed into a real home. The walls that witnessed Harper's downfall now heard laughter. The kitchen, where she planned her deceptions, now smelled of homemade meals made with love. The Christmas tree that shone during that terrible confrontation was replaced by family photos, by new and positive memories. In April, Mason's divorce was officially finalized. Harper didn't fight. She had nothing to fight with. She signed all the papers, renounced any claim on the house or assets, and disappeared from our lives completely. Mason came home that day with the finalized documents. He put them on the kitchen table and sighed deeply. "It's over. Officially, I am a divorced man." I didn't know if I should congratulate him or console him. "How do you feel?" I asked him. He thought for a long moment. "I feel free. For the first time in years, I feel I can breathe without worrying about what lie I'm going to discover, what impossible expectation I have to meet, what version of myself I have to play to keep the peace. I can just be me." I smiled. "That is the most valuable thing you can recover, son. Your authenticity." That night we celebrated modestly with a special dinner we cooked together. It wasn't celebrating Harper's downfall. It was celebrating the beginning of a new stage. The following months were of deep healing. Mason started therapy to process everything he had lived through: the manipulation, the deception, the loss of years of his life with someone who never really loved him. I also started therapy. My therapist, a wise woman named Grace, helped me understand that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but freeing oneself from the weight of resentment. "Eleanor, what you lived through was a real betrayal. Don't minimize your pain by trying to be a good mother. You have the right to feel what you feel," she told me. I worked on forgiving myself too. Forgiving myself for having been so blind for so long, for having allowed myself to be treated as invisible, for having confused infinite sacrifice with true love. Grace taught me something fundamental. Giving all of yourself doesn't make you a good mother. Teaching your son to adore you, to respect you, to treat you with dignity, that makes you a good mother. Those words etched themselves in my heart. By June, 6 months after that Christmas that changed everything, Mason had completely transformed his life. He got a better job with more reasonable hours. He started going to the gym, taking care of his health, reconnecting with friends he had abandoned during his marriage to Harper. I saw him grow in front of my eyes, becoming the version of himself he should have always been, but had been buried under layers of manipulation and control. One Saturday afternoon, while preparing dinner together, Mason told me something I will never forget. "Mom, I've been crunching numbers with my accountant. With my new salary and being more careful with expenses, I can start paying you what I owe you. Not all at once, but I can give you $2,000 a month. In about 19 years, I will have paid you everything." I stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him. "Son, I don't need you to pay me. We already established in the contract that—" He interrupted me. "Mom, I need to pay you. Not for the contract, not for legal obligation. I need to pay you because it's the right thing to do. You sold your house, your car, Grandma's jewelry. You gave everything for me and I repaid you with abandonment. Money doesn't erase that, I know. But at least I can ensure that your future is safer, that you have resources, that you never have to live in a tiny apartment again because you sacrificed everything for an ungrateful son." Tears began to roll down my cheeks. "You weren't ungrateful, son. You were manipulated. There is a difference." He also had tears in his eyes. "Maybe. But I still made decisions. I decided to believe her over trusting my own judgment about you. I decided to exclude you because it was easier than confronting my wife. Those were my decisions, and I have to live with them. But I can also make better decisions now. And my decision is to honor the debt I owe you, not just financially, but emotionally. I accepted his offer. Since July, every month religiously, Mason deposited $2,000 into my bank account. I saved that money carefully, thinking about the future, about maybe one day buying a small apartment of my own, something I could leave to him when I was no longer here. But more than the money, what I valued was the symbol that my son finally understood the value of what he had received, the weight of the sacrifice I made. In September, almost a year after that cruel message that changed everything, we celebrated something unexpected. Susan, my dear friend who supported me in the darkest moments, turned 70. Mason and I organized a surprise party for her at our house. We invited her children, her grandchildren, friends from the building where we used to live. The house filled with life, with laughter, with love. While watching Susan blow out the candles on her cake, surrounded by people who loved her, I thought about how different my life was now compared to a year ago. A year ago, I was alone in a tiny apartment, excluded from my own son's Christmas, feeling my life was worth nothing. Now I was in a beautiful house, surrounded by friends, with a relationship rebuilt with Mason, with recovered dignity. It wasn't an easy road. It required courage I didn't know I had. It required standing firm when my whole life had been compliant. It required using the law to protect myself when I always trusted only in love. But it was worth it. Every difficult moment was worth it. During the party, Susan took me aside. "Eleanor, look at what you built. Look how you took back your life." I looked around. Mason was laughing with Susan's grandchildren, showing them a magic trick. The house sparkled with decorations. The table was full of food we had prepared together. "I didn't do it alone," I told her. "You gave me the push I needed. You connected me with Patrick, with Arthur. You reminded me that I deserved respect." Susan shook her head. "I just opened doors. You were the one who had the courage to walk through them. Many women in your situation would have stayed in that apartment, accepting the crumbs given to them, convincing themselves it was enough. But you said, no more. And that, my friend, requires a type of strength few people possess." Her words filled me with a quiet pride. She was right. I had found a strength I didn't know I possessed. In late October, we received news secondhand about Harper. Apparently, she had moved to another city. She was working in insurance sales, living alone in a small studio apartment, had lost contact with almost her entire family. The man she had the affair with never left his wife. The buyers who sued her had garnished part of her wages to recover what she owed them. Her life was exactly the result of the seeds she herself planted. Mason asked me if I ever felt satisfaction about that. "Does it make you happy knowing she lost everything?" I thought carefully before answering. "It doesn't make me happy, son. Another person's suffering, even someone who hurt me, doesn't bring me joy. But it does give me peace knowing justice exists, that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like trash and expect your life to be beautiful. In that sense, there is a quiet satisfaction. It's not revenge, it's balance." November arrived with its cold air and the first signs of the holiday season. Mason and I started talking about how we would celebrate this year. "Mom, I want this Christmas to be different. I want us to invite all the people who really matter. Susan, Arthur, maybe some of my friends you've met. I want to fill this house with true love, not fake appearances like I did with Harper." I loved the idea. We spent weeks planning. We bought decorations together, discussed menus, made guest lists. Each preparation was a kind of healing, replacing the bitter memories of last year with joyful anticipation. Mason insisted on buying me a new dress for the occasion. "Mom, I want you to feel like the queen of the night, because that's what you are." I chose an elegant emerald green dress that made me feel beautiful and strong. On December 24th, exactly 1 year after that lonely Christmas Eve in my apartment, the house was full of people. Susan arrived with her children. Arthur came with his wife. Some of Mason's friends from work came with their families. I even invited Grace, my therapist, who had become much more than a professional, a true friend. The house resonated with laughter, conversations, soft Christmas music in the background. During dinner, Mason asked for attention by tapping his glass with a fork. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice emotional. Exactly 1 year ago, this house was the scene of one of the worst moments of my life. I discovered betrayals, lies, saw my world collapse. But it was also the moment where my mother, this incredible woman beside me, taught me the most important lesson of my life: that true love demands respect, that family is built with actions, not just words, and that it is never too late to correct mistakes. He continued, tears starting to form in his eyes. Mom, in front of all these witnesses, I want to thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to do so, for teaching me that dignity is non-negotiable, for showing me that strength comes in forms I never imagined. You are my hero, and I promise, every day for the rest of my life, to honor the sacrifice you made and the grace with which you forgave me. He raised his glass. To Mom, to second chances, to families that rebuild stronger after breaking. Everyone raised their glasses. To Eleanor. Resonated in the room. I cried openly. Tears of joy, of healing, of gratitude. I looked around the table, smiling faces, people who genuinely cared, true love without masks or manipulations. This was what family should have always been, not forced obligations, not fake appearances, but real connection. After dinner, while everyone was sharing dessert and coffee in the living room, I found myself alone for a moment in the kitchen. I looked out the window to the garden, where Christmas lights shone softly. I thought about the journey of the last year. From that devastating message to this moment of complete peace, it had been painful, terrifying, required a courage I didn't know I possessed. But it taught me something invaluable, that it is never too late to demand the respect you deserve, that love without dignity is not love, and that sometimes the hardest confrontations lead to the deepest healing. Mason entered the kitchen. Are you okay, Mom? I turned to him with a genuine smile. I'm more than okay, son. I'm at peace. He hugged me. I love you, Mom. And this time, I say it with actions backing the words. I hugged him back. I know, son. I know. And in that moment, surrounded by true love, in the house I saved and which was now truly a home, I understood that I had gained something much more valuable than money or property. I had gained my dignity back. And that is priceless.